In three, two, one. Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, with me, a very special guest, Aaron Rado. Aaron, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we can reschedule. I have you and six others. I'm narrowing that list down of the 20 that I had to reschedule for when I was on paternity leave and stuff. The last couple months have just been insane. So I'm feeling like I'm slowly climbing up the mountain. So I'm feeling better and better and better about my my work ethic lately. But we're gonna go right into that first question for you there, Aaron. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Well, I've been writing since high school. Singers sing, dancers dance, writers write. It's just what we do.
That's fair. Yeah.
I remember in eighth grade trying to cop out of homework and making up stories that I was, a little girl from Sweden or something like that. So could get out of homework.
Awesome.
But in the last 4 years, I really knuckled down and focused on my work and met some terrific professionals along the way who've given me some really great advice. So in earnest the last 4 years, but I tell stories. It's what I do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's fair. I mean, I had a couple kids that I'm a teacher, so I had some kids that have done that years ago, and then now, I see them as adults, and a couple of them have become writers and authors. And one in particular, I was pretty proud of because I was like, you had some amazing stories about why your homework wasn't done, or
Yeah.
things like that. And I said, I'm just glad to see that all that skill and all that time and energy actually, went into something. So
Into a
yeah, it's really
positive direction, right?
exactly. Yeah. It was funny that you mentioned that because like, yeah, it's just I remember, yeah, I remember that student had a couple others, and I actually recently my mom ran into our old librarian, and she was the one that got me into everything in terms of fantasy, sci-fi, and the recommendations she used to read to us or give to us as a kid. Just like I was teasing my mom, I said, you see her and you tell her that she's ruined my bank account, because now I have way too many books, way too many things going
Yep.
on Kindle, and way too much you know reading time on my hands. But
Well,
it's neither here
let's
nor there.
just put it, if I could put it this way, Star Wars came out when I was 12
Oh, nice.
and D&D not long
Yeah,
thereafter.
yeah.
And my mom would always scold me, Aaron, you live in a fantasy world. And then finally Lord of the Rings comes out. I mean, I have the old animated movies,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Oh, classic.
you see Hobbiton and you see the Shire, and I could show it. I said, yeah, Mom, I live in a fantasy world and it
Here it
looks
is.
like that. Here it
That's
is.
awesome.
And this is where I am happy to be.
Yeah, yeah. I always use my mom because like she used to give me like like the Forgotten Realms books. So like
Mhm.
I would get like all A's or something. She'd be like, "All right, what do you want?" My brother wanted a video game or something. I'm like, "I want another book." So she's like, "Sure, I'll buy you two books." So I was teasing her recently, and my wife was like, "Oh man, like you spend this money on these books," and now I've been getting really savvy with the baby and stuff. So I get a lot of free or reduced, or I'll wait a lot, or I'll wait till gift cards or something. But I told them both, I was like. I said, this is an investment. All these books are an investment. I said, as soon as I start selling my own, even if they're just a little bit, I'm like, then the investment has paid off. So there you go. It's been the same
I
thing.
meet that type of child every weekend at Renaissance fairs, just in
That's
case
awesome.
that segues into something else. Boy, oh boy, do I meet that exact same child.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm actually working at a school now where it's like almost all the kids, I would say, either play some sort of game like, D&D or fantasy or sci-fi on Steam, or, D&D or something like that. And I was just like, oh, I'm home now, like I'm like, you're speaking my language, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
except
that's really cool.
young ones, let me teach you a few things. What's the T-shirt? Age and treachery will always overcome youth and skill. Yeah,
That's fair.
watch
That's
out,
fair.
kiddos. We Gramps have a few things for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair. They asked me to run a game. I was like, I don't know if you want that.
Yeah, no, not so much.
Well, we'll go to number two there. What genres do you currently write in, and why?
I have always written fantasy. It's just my heart and soul. Fantasy is romance or romantic in a way, what could have been, what we wish
Yeah,
we could have created. Science fiction is freaking awesome, and I've dabbled in it, but science fiction is always what might be, and
yeah,
in sometimes in a sardonic sense as well.
yeah, yeah.
It's much more easy to be dystopian in science fiction. With fantasy, though, I don't just treat it as this, oh, la la la, romantic universe. I get dark, I get psychological. And the neat thing about fantasy, you can rip a character apart, absolutely shred him, heal him, kick him back in the game. He's still mentally really messed up, but physically he's okay. And one of my editors, when I asked, should I push my work a little bit darker? I'm not really sure if I should, because I could. He said, oh please, I really hope you don't mind that. I write action. I love action stories. My work mirrors action stories from the 40s,
Mm.
dime novels, penny dreadfuls.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
I don't bog it down. I keep it moving. I keep it quick paced, but still a really good story. And yet I'll take readers on a journey where I hope they've never been before. And my genre is just fantasy action. That's what I just
Oh,
love to do.
awesome.
Mhm.
It's like old school. My friends and I were just discussing this because I'm people keep asking me, they're like, can you do this? Can you do this? And I'm like, interviews have been hard lately because they're longer. I'm like, well, I could do, uh we had some talks about like 80s 70s 80s like Dragon Slayer, Conan, Beastmaster, things like that, and
Yep.
Red Sonja, Lady Hawk, things like that. So we were discussing a lot of those, and I
It's
was like,
funny you
oh
should
man.
mention Lady Hawk. Stick a pin in that. We'll come back to that in the
Oh,
interview.
okay, cool,
But yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Actually just got a really cool magazine with that.
If you loved 80s rock and roll, you can write fantasy action. It's
Yeah,
just the way it goes.
yeah, no, that's
Yep.
totally true.
Yep.
Can definitely see that point. That's awesome.
Yeah, kiddos, if
So
you don't love 80s rock and roll, try some out
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then get in the mood to write some fantasy action stories.
It's like all that's on my playlist right now, in terms of words with songs. Otherwise, I don't have anything really other than instrumentals. But yeah, getting
Yeah,
some of those scenes, yeah, that's awesome. So for
Rush.
that third one, which is my favorite, is talking to people about actually the books they've created or the products that they've created. So, what are your tales of Raven's Daughter books about, and how did you come up with this idea?
Well, long and short, I've written a full-length novel, Grey Warrior, and my editor on that was Mr. Patrick Labruto, who's the former
Oh,
senior editor of Doubleday and Bantam and Ace, and he was managing Conan when Bantam was publishing Conan. And he described my style as Hitchcock on Phil Dick's drugs. And for those of
okay.
you who don't know who Philip K. Dick is, look it up. So my work went out to a major publisher who turned it down, not because the publisher didn't love it, the editor loved it, but she said it read too much like the Queen's Gambit and she needed to buy the next Game of Thrones. So I work at Renaissance festivals. My home base is the Pleasure Fair in Southern California.
Oh,
And
cool.
when I got the rejection, it was the third weekend of our show. It's a 7 weekend show. And I saw 5 guys walking around as the Witcher that weekend. And I thought, I can do that. And The Witcher started as short fiction, short stories.
Yeah.
I decided to work in the novella format. And again, circling back around to Lady Hawk, I took the Etienne Navarre character, Rutger Hauer's character,
Mm,
the blonde with the black armor and the big black horse, and I turned that around and I made it into my girl. And my art name, I'm also a Celtic artist, hence the
mm.
Celtic work behind me. This is actually one of my originals
Oh,
that
cool.
I put on a blankie. So I took the name Raven's Daughter, which just sounds cool,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I turned Etienne into my female lead. And I went, and my editor, Pat, said he'd never seen anything come across his desk in 40 years of publishing that used the Basque mythology from the
Mm,
northern part of Spain, where they were never conquered. Their culture evolved completely independently of the continental culture, the Latin culture, the Celtic culture. They speak Basque in the northern part of Spain. They don't speak Spanish, they speak Basque. So I borrowed from that mythology, mixed it together with a little bit of Shakespearean stuff, and then came up with my own world. And here we are with a wonderful novella series that reads like television episodes. Because
mm,
what I was trying to do was to create a reading experience that mirrors today's streaming experience.
mm,
Sometimes you feel like binge watching. Cool. I've got the work for you. Sometimes you just want to do a little hour's worth of a read. And that's where novellas, short fiction, are really great. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
tricky work in short fiction. It takes a discipline to get it right, but I think I nailed it. And the
Hmm.
reviews have just been good, and the adventures have just been really, really fun.
No, that's awesome. I
Mhm.
definitely like those more now that I have a son because like I've been going through Anthony Ryan's like Pilgrimage of Swords, and I totally Kraken's to City of Songs. And yeah, I've just eaten up novellas lately, so that's awesome.
Yep.
I've been truly
Snack
trying to
read.
figure out how people, and I'm like I before I was like, oh, I don't get how people do it. Now I'm like, oh, I get how people do that, like those are the kind of, I've always loved novellas, but like Sebastian de Quesel, and then oh, only blanking on the other guy's name who had a lot, but
Also,
yeah, they
the
had
Home for Wayward Children,
yeah.
the
I just
short
feel
fiction,
like those are yeah, I
and
feel like those are really good.
folks often mention the Green Mile.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
right, also told
yeah,
in
totally.
novellas. I
Yeah,
try
yeah.
and keep it about 20,000 words per story. But
Oh,
what I've
nice.
done with Tales of the Raven's Daughter, there are 6 in the series, and they are, if this were a new TV show, it would be season 1. So
Mm.
each novella is its own individual story, but they
Oh,
build on one another and then conclude in the final one. Also, when I was creating the series, when I was outlining everything, on Disney Plus, they were showing Moon Knight, which is a fantastic series. But that also is an arc, a narrative arc told in 6 episodes. So I kind of combined that into my outlining. And here we go. We have Tales of the Raven's Daughter.
oh, that's cool. I was just interested in that because I'm doing a Kindle Vella series like Sword and Sorcery, like Fritz Lieber, Paul S. Kemp's Hammer and the Blade. I wanted like a lethal weapon duo set in a fantasy world with Mission Impossible like stakes and
Mission Impossible, I
things. Yeah.
throw in a little bit of that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Plus
yeah, it's
that
definitely been the thing. Yeah.
that
Yeah, it's
wonderful
super cool.
episodic television vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. And then I'm trying to think, remember what the my friend and I were just discussing. I can't believe I must be having like a second Monday. There was a couple other really, really good, you know, we were talking about kind of like a Hawaii Five-O vibe, like the original. I love the Magnum PI episodes. I used to watch them with my dad all the time, the original with Tom Selleck and
18.
yeah,
Again,
18, yeah,
we're
yeah.
going back to the 80s, but
Yeah.
again, when you can take that nice short episodic work and
Yep.
turn it into fiction, but I don't short people on the experience. It's really important in fantasy. Give them something they're not expecting, which is what I do with my world. And we can that's all into question 4, I'm sure. But give them something new, give them something good, hook it in a way that's unique and original, and keep it in a format that everyone can just enjoy or snack read or whatever.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting that you mentioned that because I have recently like give them something new, which I had recently talked to a couple different people, and it was interesting because we was reading an article a while back from another podcast and on their blog, and um I kind of went the other route because I'm like, okay, I'm like I actually because I don't want to do a lot of world building, and I want to focus on characters and kind of like the mysteries at times or
Yep.
what like the plot. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna kind of because I have my own fantasy series with my books that I, am more worried about that for the world. But for this one, I kind of flipped it. So I just want to point out to the audience, I flipped it, and I'm trying to, really go into your D&D knowledge or your homebrew knowledge or your, you know, same thing like your sword and sorcery knowledge. And I'm trying to almost like, show you like most of this world, but the things we're going to go and see are probably different. So it was a very interesting article about world building. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I know some people, it's like if you have a little bit of time and because with a novella you have way more time than I do because my, each episode for me is about 2,000 words tops.
Yep.
And then each season's about the novella. So I feel like, again, you have to keep that episodic nature going. But it's interesting, for you, I think to have your pacing because I think your pacing and mine, while similar, are there's just different things. And I do like the different
Yep.
mediums because there's a different type of storytelling. So even if you're being episodic, I just find it interesting lately how there's so many different ways to be episodic. It's kind of crazy, but I
It's a
think it definitely
master of
depends
a
on the audience.
discipline. It's a
Yeah,
master of a
totally.
discipline, but every writer,
Good way to
every
put it.
one of you guys out there, practice your short fiction. Either write in a novella or write in a short story. It's amazing how short stories become backstories when you're building it into an overall novel. I've
True.
done
Yeah.
that with my own novel
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
With my novellas, I try and keep them about 20,000 words, and that's on the short end of a novella. But again, they keep that same pace.
Yeah. My pesky novellas, they keep snapping me and turning into novels. I'm like, you guys got to stop. Yeah,
Again, it's a discipline.
yeah,
You gotta, yeah, it's so easy to let yourself just meander, and
yeah,
that's very tempting. But
yeah,
that's why, and I always recommend this, writers, outline your work. It is so important to outline. I mean, writers at every single show I do, and they tell me they can't finish a novel, and I say, "Do you outline it?" And they're like, and of course they haven't. And some think it's going to restrict their creativity, but it doesn't. It's this wonderful outline, blueprint
yeah,
of where you need it to go. It really keeps you on track.
yeah,
When I was doing Tales of the Raven's Daughter, even though I was ready to start writing the first novella, I did not allow myself to do that until I'd outlined all six,
mm,
because then I knew where the overall narrative arc was going. And your ending will always change your beginning, happens every time, or two or three times. And once you have a really good idea of where you're going, then you know where to start.
yeah. No, totally. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mhm.
I'm trying to keep it going. You said a lot of things there. I'm like, I have to really think about that now. It's going to be a whole podcast. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, that's why I like to give lectures on how to craft, as well as, the cool places that you can go while you're crafting. But
yeah,
focus on your characters. Characters to the key. My work is incredibly character driven. Mr. Libruto said my work was one of the most character driven pieces he'd ever read
mm,
in fantasy. I write about damaged people because they're just so much fun. When they're normal, they're not necessarily healthy.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
cool. And let's work on that. World building is fantastic. Magic systems are great, but a character is a product of those. And you've got to focus on your characters. They will lead you where the story needs to go. Tales of the Raven's Daughter has a wonderful, bittersweet ending. The characters were just taking me there. I could have tried to force it to be a happy, happy ending, but it would have been just that, forced.
yeah.
The ending's good, but it'll tug at your heartstrings just a little bit. Listen to your characters, they'll tell you where you need to go.
Yeah, no, totally. I had some, I was like working on my first fantasy novel. It's a like a heist. Um, but it's really about two friends and they end up unfortunately wanting two very different things. And
Mhm.
then that split causes that rift causes a lot of huge implications, not just for them, but for the entire region. And then later, like the world and things like that. But yeah, it was very hard because I had two characters in there that I really thought were in that book, and they were like, "We're not in this book." And then later
Yep.
on, these other two characters who are very similar came up to me or tapped me on the shoulder, like, "We're in this book," and I'm like,
Yep.
wait a minute. I'm like, wait. I'm like, but it was really just like the two characters I had originally, like great romance. And I don't know, I was just on a roll and I was like, okay, I like these two characters, but I still like the class of character and I needed them. So they changed a lot. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like it was almost like they were basically two different pairs of characters and their relationship totally turned, totally different. And I'm like, I was very surprised that once I just let them go, where I went. And actually I changed from a I would say like a Arabic like medieval setting to almost like 17th century like Russian like Eastern European setting
That's
and some
really
stuff
interesting.
just
Yeah.
yeah some it just wasn't I'm a huge desert fan and I was writing a couple other things and that's like my favorite setting but stuff just wasn't working and the characters were like no and even the
No,
time
you
of the
don't go there.
year yeah the precipitation just different things. So yeah I agree with you if you I got finally got out of my way and all of a sudden I was like wow I got something
Yep.
pretty unique and interesting. So yeah,
My
I
my
definitely agree with
girl
that.
is my girl is younger than my guy. And well, I'm not making any judgments. I mean, my beloved Paul Rado, my husband, I lost him a few years ago, but he was
Oh, sorry.
17 years old. Yeah, I know. He's always in my head though. I always used to say, Paul, I wish you could just listen to what's going on in my head. And of course now he does. And I kind of feel him there, but he was older than I was,
Mm,
about a generation earlier. My girl and my guy are a generation apart.
mm,
And funny enough, I describe their relationship as sort of a workplace romance.
mm.
They just have a really weird workplace in a
Yeah, yeah,
fantasy
yeah.
world. But he's older and wants to retire and settle down. And she's the new hire, just discovering what she can do. And these two are very far apart. And that makes for a really interesting dynamic. Will they, won't they,
Yeah.
will they, won't they get together? I will not answer that because it's a huge spoiler, but it does create that wonderful dramatic tension. And by the way, I've also created one of the best gender fluid characters ever based
Mm.
on Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh, cool.
Whenever you're creating any type of a character that's anyway a specialty type of a character, make the character the character. The fact that they are of a different world or different point of view is secondary to them being a really awesome character. Just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
stick something in there for brownie points. That's what
Yep.
bothers me a lot with the way LGBTQ is often portrayed in media. Books can explain the character better, but make the character rock,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
rock. And my character does, because my gender character will switch genders in the middle of sentences just to mess with you visually, and definitely brings the snark. And you need moments like that to break up the dramatic tension. And yeah, it's quite a fun dynamic that I've got going on in my world.
Oh, awesome. I don't know if you saw in the podcast group, somebody had asked about, like, oh, I have this character and this and that. And it was kind of the same thing, where they brought this up. They're like, is this a trope? And I'm like, well, it depends on how you approach them. Like, if you're just putting somebody in there, with special needs or LGBTQ or a woman, I always reference myself because, I was listening to a podcast several years ago. I guess now it was like 10, probably 10, 12 years ago. And I was listening to a podcast, I'm driving, and then they're like, oh, look at your characters. And they were really talking about like chauvinistic male authors or points of view of writing, and they're like, look around, like how many of your characters are women? And I was like, well, I have these two. And then they're like, then the next question was, well, are those women secondary characters? Are they women of color? Or and then it just kept going. And I was like, oh my God, I like really had to work on my writing because I know being a guy, and particularly, from my area or region or whatever, ethnicity, whatever culture. And I was like, dang, I was like, well, that's not what I want to write about, And I was like, now it's like I think it's really hard to find a I don't write anything in a European setting, to be honest. I think that you could find some Vikings who are different in my world and maybe one other like European
Vikings,
trope or whatever.
Vikings, Vikings come from Europe.
Yeah,
Just,
well, I'm saying like
just
European
FYI.
trope. Yeah, well, I'm saying like European trope, you know what I mean?
Fair
Um,
enough, fair enough. But
but
Vikings do come from Europe. But
yeah,
yeah,
but I'm
you're
saying like
absolutely
European
right.
trope, you know what I mean? Is like, but I don't have very many now because I went through such this, conglomeration of processes where I was like, oh man. And then, I teach social studies. I, study different cultures. And I'm like, those are always the things that I really liked about fantasy or even sci-fi, like the different, like Star Wars, you mentioned, like the different planets and, just the different peoples and cultures. So but I think again, just to go off your things, it's been a thing recently that keeps coming up for me is like, I think anything you do just to do it, just to get, like you said, I like how you put it. I wish that I had said it that way in the
Don't
podcast
do
group,
it for brownie
but
points.
yeah, you
Do
have
it
to do it
because
to
it
make the
works.
character. Yeah, yeah. No,
Do
I
it
totally
because it
agree.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like students, like readers are like students. They, like kids will, if you're BS with them, they'll know. And I always tell
Oh,
people, I'm
heck
like,
yeah.
readers are the same way. They're going to be like, oh, this person's just putting this in for brownie points, and it's going to totally throw them off, and and throw off your story. So I totally agree.
They'll see through the superficiality
Yep,
in a
totally.
microsecond.
Yep.
Make the characters real. My gender character is the herald of the world below. And
Oh, that's cool.
you were asking, what's my book about? So my quick pitch, and by the way, everybody practice your elevator pitch, because
Yeah,
I was
amen.
able I was able to pounce on an editor at a recent convention from a major imprint. I won't say which one, but boy, oh boy, am I glad that I practice this elevator pitch about 1,000 times a day. Because when you pounce on a major editor, you never know when that's going to come in handy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Tales of the Raven's Daughter, my girl dies on page 13,
Oh, nice.
but she gets better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's how I always deliver it. But what I've done in that moment is make you go, wait, what?
Yeah, yeah.
My girl turns out to be a realm walker. She can walk between the world below and the world above. Now, she didn't know that until she died, but
Mm,
now she's on a really nifty learning curve. And the whole Tales of the Raven's Daughter series, collection one, which reads like, the first season of a new TV episode or a new TV show, is her journey of discovery. So I created a brand new world. In fantasy, we have been to every castle and tavern and forest and tomb and every above world thing you can possibly imagine in fantasy. But I wanted to create something where I could just literally pull it out of a hat if I needed to. The world below is anything I want it to be at any time I want to be it. I want it to be that. I chose the Greek mythology model where there are fields where the heroes are and places
Cool.
where wrong people are punished. And I could just make it up on the fly, which means that my readers have never been there because it exists in my brain. Um, I've got magenta landscapes, I've got mead halls, I've got this wonderful field of flowers where the glow on the flower petals moves around like birds in flight. And where I drew inspiration from that in Los Angeles, we have a place called the Descanso Gardens. And every holiday, they do the Descanso Gardens at night. And they have this one field of electric tulips. They're all LED. It's a solid field of these light up LED tulips. Well, they put it on this awesome computer random pattern so that the glows on the LEDs are just dancing around. I'm
That's
thinking, well,
cool.
I can do that until the
Yeah.
designated asshole of my series, and by the way, I write dickish characters very, very well, shows up and he makes all the flowers wither. And I was taking my readers on this great journey until the jerk showed up. and, and there you go. So you're able to create visuals as well as dramatic tension just by creating a brand new landscape where your readers have never been.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Mm,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
it's a fun place to be. And it takes a little work in fantasy to create something new. I'm sorry to all everybody who loves the stuff in fantasy, but I don't do dragons, I don't do elves, I don't do gnomes, I don't do ogres, I don't do urban fantasy, and God bless everybody who does. But I write about people and I put them in a unique world. I want to bring something fresh and new, even if it's only in 20,000 words. And so that's why I kill my girl so quickly.
Mhm.
It's her journey of discovery, but if she hadn't died so fast, she would never be on that journey of discovery. And
Yeah.
then the world below becomes her landscape, as well as the world above. And she can make that transition. It makes for a fun storyline.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. Where did you get that idea from, with her being like a realms walker and being able to do both?
Again, I pulled from my Greek mythology when I was
Mm.
in, gosh, when I was in middle school. The local library was only about 100 feet from my middle school.
Oh wow.
And I discovered a book on Greek mythology, chowed that down really fast, and more and more and more. And it's a really neat premise because only gods can go to Olympus. The
Oh
mortals
yeah,
have to
yeah.
go somewhere. So again, and I just love Shakespeare. I mean, I was always in the Shakespeare festivals when I was in the drama class in high school. And then the Basque mythology as well, borrowing from their pantheon of gods and goddesses. And I just took all those influences I loved, mixed it with Lady Hawk. And people, if you haven't seen Lady Hawk,
Yeah, go do
just go
it.
see Lady Hawk. It's Matthew Broderick, Ricker Hauer, Michelle Pfeiffer. And I know that the score is electronic by Vangelis, but you know what? It's the 80s. Just enjoy the freaking movie. But again, that is a myth from it's a fairy tale, if you will, from the Basque region of Navarre. And so my girl is from Navra because just
Oh, that's cool.
change a consonant here and there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bang, you got a whole new place. But it has its roots in a place that actually existed. So it's really fun when you can ground it with part of the European world that is not commonplace, and then just make it your own. Always try and make something your own. When everybody does one thing, do something else. When they zig, you zag.
Yeah.
And that's my style of writing.
No, it's awesome. Yeah,
Thanks.
I tend to find the not that I don't like typical elves, orcs, and things like that. My personal writing, I don't do that. I if I do anything, I do a conglomeration. I got elves that actually have chloroplasts in their skin, um, and they don't have to eat or sleep. So I took some of those old tropes and then kind of turn them around a little bit, and that's actually why they are so attuned to nature, is because they're part of nature, not just,
Yep.
whatever. So, but I tend to find that, either want something changed now like that and something unique, or I just don't want it at all. Not that I won't read people's stories or whatever, watch a movie, with your, typical fantasy tropes, but I like when somebody does something new now. I feel like I've
Gotta
read
do
so
it.
much the same old, same old. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want something new, want something
Try and do
different,
it fresh. In
Yeah.
my novel Gray Warrior, I started out with my main character, who's a guy, and his father on a turret as a storm is coming in at night, and I put him through a very action driven moment, and then I get him inside. Technically, I did start with it was a dark and stormy night, but but the way I had him act through it, my editor, again, the guy's got 40 years in the industry, says, yeah, you pulled it off. You can do tropes as long as you find a fresh way to spin it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
That's what
totally.
you really have to look for, is a fresh way to do it, because that's what's going to engage and intrigue. Again, when they zig you zag, find something that just doesn't quite work and make it work. And now you've got something fresh and brand new.
Yeah, I actually just read a author who, in their story, I had to reread it twice at one part, but he had actually inserted and started the story with the same um, three witches from Shakespeare's play that shall not be named on here. But like the way that
Okay.
he did it was so unique, and then I had to like reread it, and then I was like, "Is this really the same scene?" And he actually had them just like come upon. And it was like an urban fantasy thing. So like that the Monster Hunter essentially came onto the scene, and I was like, "That is like brilliant." And yeah, it was really funny. And then he's basically like, "This is where this came from," and I was like, "Oh wow, it
Well,
was
I
really
am a
good."
Celtic artist. I'm not sure why a Mac name won't be named on your show, but we do all know what we're talking about. But yeah, make it fresh, make it new. Take the same old stuff, just spin it in a way that you're not expecting to, and let your characters guide you. They will every time if you just listen to them.
Yeah, yeah. I said a friend 2 months spent on it. Finally, he's like, I just let them go, and now we finished his book. I was like, there you go. That's a good way to do it right there. He goes, I think I should have listened earlier. I was like, well, I think your wife tells you that a lot too. So he's like, it's good to know that my wife and my characters are in the same boat. I said, that's fair. So I'm just curious. So, well, you already answered part of this question, and now I kind of want to know how you did this. So in terms of planning out a certain number of books ahead of time, so you knew where your story was going to go, but did you know it was going to be necessarily 6 books, or like how'd you pick
No,
the
no, actually,
number?
no, good question. I was thinking seven in the first place.
Oh,
But
interesting.
as I outlined them, I realized that five and six were redundant.
Mm,
And so I just combined them into one.
mm,
And the journey of discovery on the characters. This is a really neat thing with my gender character. My gender character turns out to be straight. I
mm.
did not know that until the very final book. When my gender character, name's Odwin, by the way, and when my girl first meets Odwin, my girl has never died before and is just a touch on the defensive. Go figure.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I was so worried that that the LGBTQ community would think I was being pejorative, calling the character Odwin, as in odd one.
Mm,
So I thought, let's just get that one out of the way. In the very first book, when my girl meets Odwin, and again, she's being a little defensive, she's never died before. She says, that wouldn't be short for odd one, is it? It would certainly suit you. And Odwin, I'm recording the audiobooks right now. Well, so much for manners. Well, first of all, I will love being odd. Odd is a perfectly wonderful state of being, and anyone else who thinks differently is a, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, yeah, a dead mortal.
mm,
Now get up. Your body isn't going anywhere.
mm,
Later, she apologizes for calling Odwin odd. And she, I don't use the pronoun they because it doesn't quite work in prose. It's just a teeny bit confusing when you read it.
mm,
But in the sixth book, sure enough, Odwin has created such a wonderful relationship with my girl. He, as a he, is kind of into my girl. And there's a moment where they really share a good kiss. He doesn't do that much for either of them except a really good moment, but he's kind of into her. But when my character, the same character, presents as a female, I've got a couple of rogue gods floating around, and they love picking her up and tossing her back and forth and doing lots of kisses, and she loves kissing the guys. And it occurred to me right then that gender character is absolutely straight. It's just in different iterations, because Odwin is a yin yang, a living yin yang, and there's a lot of male female energy all throughout my books. And it's that I even borrowed, for example, Odwin is Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream. Well, I borrowed Oberon and Titania and made him into my King of Shadows and my Raven Queen,
Mm.
complete with dysfunctional relationship. There's a constant struggle, complementary struggle between the yin and the yang, the male and the female, all throughout the book, with my girl and my guy, with the King of Shadows, the Raven Queen, with Odwin in and of his self, herself. It really creates a neat dynamic that's an undertone. It's not overt, but it's there if you look for it.
Mm.
And I just thought it was funny that my character in the very last book told me that she was straight. I
Mm.
didn't see it going that way, but that's how it turned
Yeah.
out.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah,
I
I
just
know.
had
Weird.
another
Huh? Yep.
Yeah, I just had another author tell me they're like they thought their character survived, and then they were like, their character came to me after the last draft and said, "I actually died in that last chapter." Yes. And then all the
Uh,
readers were devastated. I was like, "Oh." It's
I
amazing
did
what
that
they
with
will tell you. But
I did that with a supporting character in my novel
mm,
Grey Warrior. I had this one throwaway character sacrifice himself in,
mm.
to save another character, and I realized he was just a red shirt. But then it was a really great moment, so I had to pump him up, and I really felt terrible because throughout the first opening chapters, I started building up this character just a little bit more, knowing I was going to kill him. It was good though when he died, but I really felt bad, dude. I'm only promoting you so I can axe you in the last chapter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny.
Yeah,
My
I can get
friend,
a little dark and evil from time to time. That's
yeah,
my trademark.
well, I was interviewing a author recently, and she goes, "It's funny." She goes, "We were interviewing, and she goes, it's funny how none of my characters have ever said, 'Hey, I any of them that she killed.'" She goes, "They never say, 'Hey, I think I'm still alive.'" They're she goes, "They all just accept the fact that they're dead." And she goes, "I think I need to think about that with myself." And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I was like, but makes good stories. So, so if
That's
you
it.
could meet,
Always, my
yeah,
maxim is always let your characters guide you.
yeah, yeah,
Listen to
totally,
them. They will tell you what you need to know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then your story will be the richer for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, it's really just depends on them. That's great advice. So, if you could meet one person from your books and go on an adventure with them, who would it be and why?
My guy, Creston. Creston Duhalda, and I spell it with the umlaut over the A,
Mm.
and pulling, of course, a little bit of a Germanic type of a reference. Creston is a wonderful, damaged character, but for one stupid mistake, he has now ruined the rest of his life. But when he was a younger guy, he kicked ass. And in fact, the next series of 6 novellas I'm working on is Creston's backstory.
Oh, that's cool.
Creston, in my opinion, is way more interesting than my girl. My girl's my lead character, and she was a former tavern mistress before she died. She didn't know she was born a realm walker. And okay, a little spoiler alert for the first book. Sorry, guys. Okay, tune out now. But Creston was also born a realm walker, but
Hmm.
he was sort of manufactured by a goddess. He wasn't
Oh, that's
naturally
cool.
in that way. Yeah. Again, I love twisting up the backstory. Creston is a really great character, and I haven't really based him on any of the other characters in Lady Hawk or anything like that.
Mm.
But he was just intrepid and charming and a really good guy. He wound up to become captain of the Crimson Brigade, which was betrayed from within. And that was part of the stupid mistake that he made, was to get retribution, which he obtained. But then what do you do? After revenge
Mm.
is over, it's like Inigo Montoya. It's funny. Now that I have the revenge, what do I do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
And so I borrowed that for Creston. Well, he's kind of stuck now. He's
Mm.
sort of the devil's butcher, because that's, part of selling your soul. What do you do
Yeah.
after that? You get
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you get what you came for, but then, you got a few more years kicking around. But Creston is the character that I'd like to take an adventure with, because he's definitely a world traveler.
Definitely sounds like it'd be an adventure, that's for sure.
Yep. That's what I write. I write action stories, I write adventures. I love epic novels. Fantasy romance is fine too, but I'm an action writer, like stories from the 40s, like Penny Dreadfuls. That's the style I really feel the most comfortable in.
Hmm.
Throw in a dash of dark psychology, and that's me. So if you love action writing, you're going to love my stories.
Oh, nice. I say I definitely it goes back to, just write what you love to read, and I think that's always
Exactly.
I'm a huge Forgotten Realms fan. I love I'm a teacher. I don't do a lot of sex scenes. I don't do a lot of swearing unless it's my urban fantasy. Nathaniel is a ex-Marine, or sorry, recon Marine, Special Forces, and going through some stuff. So a
Yep.
lot of people in his company tend to, stuff happens. So I always tell parents, I'm like, you're not gonna want your kid to read that unless they're a little bit older. But my fantasy, it's like that's the kind of fantasy I like. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Yeah,
Well, if I
definitely
may,
write what you love.
Preston, if I may, Creston also hears battlefield voices. That's which is how
Oh,
I
that's cool.
describe the PTSD. Except that it's actually manufactured in his brain by another character who's trying to spare him the worst of what he could do if he was let off his chain.
Mm,
And so you don't discover that until the fifth book. So you think the guy just has PTSD, which is certainly something to be addressed, but it's a little bit more than that. I always take it one step further. And in fantasy, you have that type of world where you can do that kind of magical influence. So you can take
yeah.
psychology and add a dash of spice to it. And so again, that's why Creston is a really fantastic character.
Oh, that's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
If you could have one magical power or skill that a character of yours has, which would it be and why?
Um. Oh gosh. I'm gonna say I like my girl in Tales of the Raven's Daughter, but again, my guy in Grey Warrior, my male lead, his name is Travis. He's a battle mage, and
Oh,
his
cool.
his world, his magical abilities is all set toward fighting. And in a way, and just to pitch Grey Warrior really quickly, two guys have got to make it work, and I don't make it easy because there's no story if I make it easy. One guy's the sword, that's Travis. One guy's the magic, his name is Roland.
Mm,
Travis is a control freak, Roland is a drug addict. And that's how I
mm,
start the story. That's how I approached Lord of the Rings, because my character Travis was like the steward of Gondor. He served the head of the world in which those characters live, and unfortunately the magical head is a drug addict, so my character Travis has to take it all unto himself, but all his magic is geared toward battle readiness, because I used to when I was a little bit thinner, used to fight heavies in the SCA. So
oh, cool.
I've definitely got the heart of a warrior, if not the body of one anymore. But yeah, that's the one I'd go for. Is I love that battle readiness, because it can really get you far. Not as far
Yeah.
as the higher mages, but you can kick some serious butt.
No, that's cool. Yeah, that's neat.
Yep, 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 yep.
So if you could visit one place that you've created, which would it be and why that
Yeah,
one in particular?
yeah, that's a no-brainer. The realm. That's where I take my girl in Tales of the Raven's Daughter. Because again, it's anything I want it to be at any time I want it to be it. In the fifth book, we start with my girl in a mead hall. Now, I don't say it's Viking because Vikings don't exist in my world, but everybody knows darn well it's a Viking mead. And a wonderful moment happens where my girl is starting to transition from being just a walker who can go between to someone who's becoming tethered to her world, whether if she doesn't watch it, she's going to be there forever. She actually can taste the mead,
Mm,
where a mortal wouldn't be able to do that. And the realm is just freaking cool. You can have gods and monsters in one moment. You can have healing columns. Mind you, what do spirits need with healers? They're already dead.
yeah,
I had to find some place for my characters to recover. The
yeah.
realm is a freaking awesome place, and I only have just scratched the surface on what I can create with it.
Well, that's cool. And I just have one question to go back up. In
Yeah,
terms of like her abilities as a realms walker. Now, like if she's on like her actual like where she's from or her home plane or whatever, however you want to put it, do those powers carry over, or is it like she's normal here and not there? Or I was just curious how you kind of went about the
absolutely,
skills or
absolutely.
the magic or things like that for
Yeah,
her.
yeah, fair enough. When my girl dies, her natural ability is to walk between worlds. She meets the King of Shadows and the Raven Queen. They both offer her the chance to be their champion.
Oh,
She
that's cool.
chooses the Raven Queen because she gets a better vibe. Why does the Raven Queen need a walker? Because the Raven Queen can see what's going on in the world above, but she can't influence it. She needs someone to go on the Mission Impossible tasks. And that's my girl. And so my girl gets outfitted by the Raven Queen, gets this really awesome dagger, throw it, and it's an automatic crit every single time.
Oh, cool.
If if you are a realm walker in service to the Raven Queen, I'm working on an RPG guide actually. If you're not,
Oh, that's cool.
you better have a darn high deck save because you'll like stab yourself with the dagger. But it's the Raven Queen who can take my girl's body and reinfuse it with her spirit. And that actually becomes an issue in the later two novellas, the last two, when the King of Shadows wants to absolutely undermine my girl. You can kill a realm walker, you just prevent their spirit from being reinfused.
Mm,
But of course, the matron, the Raven Queen, is going to be right there to patch her back up. So we got to distract. So does she die? Doesn't she die? Yeah, not going to answer that again. That's a spoiler. But her ability is to go between, and then the gods below help guide her. Well, the gods below there are two: the King of Shadows, Raven Queen, Oberon, and Titania. And Titania is the one who guides her to evolve into the character that she becomes.
that's really cool.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Again,
I had
very
it in.
character driven,
Oh,
very character centered, very character
yeah.
driven.
Yeah. I say sorry. I had that one as a caveat in my notes, so I want to make sure I asked that. I'm sure
Absolutely.
that.
Glad you did.
So for that last one, do you have any news, updates, promos, anything like that that you can share with us today?
Yep,
Anything that you're
absolutely.
working on?
Yes, I'm working on the audiobooks. My work is available on Amazon, and I'm going to upload it to Ingram Spark as a complete collection. I've
Oh,
sent it out to
cool.
a few publishers. I'm hoping that they might pick up the bound collection, but I will do it as a single bound hardback.
Oh, cool.
But about half my readers are asking me for the audio version. Well, I'm here at the New York Renaissance Festival. Shout out to New York. And I'll be here until the end of the show. Then I go down to Maryland, and then I'll hit the World Fantasy Convention on the way
Ooh.
back in Kansas City. I'm already booked. And I do a full circuit of shows. You can aaronradoauthor.com, and you'll get my show schedule. But the audiobooks are something everybody wants. And sure enough, my RV turns out to be a really nice recording studio. Who
Oh,
knew?
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bought myself a really nice mic, and I'm sitting here doing that. And that's the current project that's underway. And then next year, I'm hoping to do, like I said, that RPG guide. I really would like to encourage fans to write fan fiction and fan artists to draw inspiration from my work. And if they send me pictures or illustrations, I can reproduce them for them, sell them at my shows, and
It's
then give the
cool.
artist like a 70/30 cut.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that. I just haven't quite gotten those announcements yet. But I have a newsletter on my website. You can sign up for it. And I know you were going into social media. Everything is Aaron Rado author. And so whether I'm most active on Instagram, I like taking pictures of everybody I meet holding up a book. And then I do a little clip show and I post that onto Insta and TikTok. And then I chronicle all my travels, things like that. Yeah, I shouldn't really be taking pictures of the scenery while I'm driving a 24-foot RV
That's fair.
with a Hyundai Tucson in tow, but I did, and you can see my little travel log. But I've got a whole slew of shows next year, and I want to bring my work to major market Renaissance festivals where they let me jury in a little bit more easily because they don't have a lot of authors. Fantasy writers, your readers are at Ren fairs.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not going to find them at Comic Cons. God bless Comic Cons. And I did Comic Con International in San Diego, and I did some major fan expos. But you're going to find your readers at Renaissance festivals, SCA events, LARPing events, and SFF cons.
Oh, I
That's
didn't
where
think of LARPing events.
fantasy
That's a
fans
good
are.
one. I actually didn't think of that because remember you and I talked about the Renaissance festivals. I said to my buddy, I was like, why have we not thought of that? We were always thinking of, we're trying to think of new ideas. I was like, that was just silly of us. So
Yeah,
I have not thought of LARPing because there's a huge event actually. Well, I don't know how big it is, but they've been, gaining momentum the last couple years since the pandemic. So that's actually a really good idea. I had not considered that. So that's a good one.
LARPers read, SCA people
Yeah.
absolutely read. God love the SCA. I just, when I'm coming out here, I'm from Los Angeles, so I did a whole schedule of shows, and one of them was Penzic War. Huh, that was big. Never been to Penzic. And even though on the day that I was showing, I showed for 2 days because the rest of the time it was raining and I sell books. Yeah, not a good combination there. But everybody in the SCA reads. Whether they read my work or not is always nice when they do, but they all read. So yeah, look to get jury into these type of festivals if you can, and it's a really great marketplace.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we're definitely we talked about well you and I discussed the one in Buffalo. I think it was the one in Buffalo. I
NASFA.
forget, but thank you. Yeah, yeah, that one's on
Yeah,
our list for next year. So
yeah,
like
I'm
we're
hoping to
actually
be
working
there
that
as
in our
well.
calendar. Yeah,
Well,
it'd be really fun.
I might just start up a Kickstarter so I can get myself over to Glasgow for Worldcon.
Oh, yeah.
And anyone who's not aware, I know we're wrapping up soon. Anyone who's not aware of the SFF scene, when Worldcon is out of North America, we hold a NASFIC, North American Science Fiction Convention. And next year it'll be in Buffalo. And then 2 weeks later, Worldcon will be in Glasgow, Scotland.
I just saw somebody else. I don't know if it was Dirk Ashton or somebody was just talking about um booking like flights and stuff for that. So I was like, that sounds really cool. I
Yeah,
did just see somebody's tweet or whatever.
you gotta book your shows well in advance. And
Yeah.
for those of you who want to try Ren fairs, most Renaissance festivals will have a guest artist program. You can also apply as a guest author. Ask if
Oh,
they
that's
do
cool.
that, where you can just show up for a week or two without the full investment in a
Oh,
8 or 12 week show. You just show up for a couple of weeks. And again, your readers will be there, I promise you that.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's actually really good to know because that was one of the things we discussed was like, could we get to, one, like every weekend with like work and like my son and stuff like that. So that's actually really good to know. I'll have to talk to my buddy about that as we're planning. That's really good
Okay.
information.
The
Cool. Well,
New
yeah.
York, really quick, the New York Renaissance Festival is owned by Bristol Fairs, who owns the Bristol Show in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and then our
Mm,
show, the original Renaissance Pleasure Fair in Los Angeles. And they have a very well established guest artist program. And
mm.
so just dip your toe in for a couple of weeks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
come with folks.
Oh, yeah, that's super cool.
Mhm.
Well, that's very helpful information. I appreciate that. I'm gonna write that
My
down in my
pleasure.
notes for later.
You bet.
Um, well, thank you so much, Aaron. I just want to remind our audience real quick though, again, in the description, we're just going to constantly be talking about it underneath here. Or if you're listening, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of our 12 other, audio stations, rss.com. We just want to make sure that you guys are going to the description, checking out our author links, things like that. Especially, the main one's always going to be either their main website if they have one, or if you go underneath like Amazon, but either wherever you can get the most information, that's gonna be the first link there. So please make sure you guys check those out. By this time, our new website will be up. And very soon we'll have parking lots for alumni guests of the show, where anybody that has chosen to have a parking lot, you can actually just go there and then browse their couple of their books, book covers, have descriptions that the authors have written themselves or the artists, directors, things like that. And you can actually go there. It'll be like a little one-stop shop. But again, it's gonna be the same links that the authors give us in the description. So please make sure you're doing that. And for any products such as Aaron's books or Audible books or audiobooks, please make sure you guys are reviewing wherever those are sold because that's going to be the way that everybody gets more of the income back and is able to produce more things for you. So please make sure you're doing that. Aaron, thank you so much. It was a
Thanks.
pleasure. Really glad that we could get you in today and, or a little bit earlier in the season too, which is really nice. So, but yeah, anytime you want to come back, just let me know and we'll get you on the schedule as soon as possible and get it figured out for you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, you too. Hopefully, in the next summer at least, I'll see you, over on the other side of my state. So I look forward to that. Hopefully, we'll have a booth next to each other and can chit chat and stuff. So
That'd
that'll
be
be awesome.
great. That'd be
Yeah,
absolutely great.
cool. Well, you have a good rest of the day, Aaron, and I will talk to you later.
Bye bye.
See ya.